Looking for an EHR that's built for the way therapists work? From automated scheduling and billing to customizable notes and treatment plans, Simple Practice gives you everything you need right at your fingertips. Learn more at simplepractice.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Powbox, a HIPAA-compliant email security platform built specifically for healthcare providers. Powbox helps therapists secure every email they send and receive through Google Workspace and Microsoft 365. Our listeners can get $250 off an annual plan with promo code MODERN.
You're listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide, where therapists live, breathe, and practice as human beings. To support you as a whole person and a therapist, here are your hosts, Curt and Katie Vernoy.
Welcome back, Modern Therapists. This is Modern Therapist Survival Guide. I'm Curt with Katie Vernoy, and this is the podcast for therapists about the things that go on in our practices, things that go on in our profession. And we are continuing on with our series. Last year, we started talking with some grad students, and we decided, let's invite them back. Let's see what's happened over the course of a year. And hopefully this is something for people who are interested in joining into the profession, can be a resource as far as what it's really like to go through the process of becoming a therapist. So we are joined once again today by Eden Lathem, and thank you so much for coming back and spending some time with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Excited to talk again and see what's going on. I'll ask you the question we're asking our grad students / new therapists in this series. Who are you and why do you want to be a therapist?
Yeah, so I'm Eden Lathem, and kind of what really got me to want to be a therapist is that, I think I said in the last episode, initially I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I was in undergrad. I was doing psychology and was like, people are what I'm interested in. I'm interested in people. I'm interested in helping professions. But I didn't initially know that I wanted to be a therapist. Really, the two main populations that I enjoyed working with was people who were incarcerated and then people with disabilities. And so then from that, I was like, well, I could do both by being a therapist. So that's kind of what led me down that pathway. And then I kind of made the decision of I like systemic thinking. I'm going to go the marriage and family therapist route as well. So that's kind of what got me into it. And then I was at Lipscomb University's marriage and family therapy program. And I graduated this past year in the summer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Feels like a long time ago, but was really not that long ago within the same year. So yeah, and then right now I'm working at an intensive outpatient clinic, and I'm the trauma therapist there.
So what is the process been like as far as graduating, getting registered with your state licenses board, just kind of all of the bureaucratic stuff that you've had to face here?
Yeah, it's been, I think our program tried to prepare us as much as possible. But there's still also those aspects of, I don't exactly know what I'm doing. So having to, reach out and, get additional help from, past professors and stuff like that. But as soon as I graduated, we were really told, at least in the state of Tennessee, there was a new law coming through where you wouldn't be able to practice unless you have your temporary licensure. So they were like, get your temp license as soon as possible. And then, our temp licensure is about to switch into associate licensure. So there's a lot of laws kind of going down the line. So I was like, I need to get my temp license as quick as possible. So the process for that was essentially just doing a lot of paperwork. You need to get birth certificate and all that kind of stuff, finding a supervisor. And that wasn't too difficult. I had some people in my cohort who were going to somebody who had graduated previously and was a supervisor. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that too. So found my supervisor, and then kind of just submitted the paperwork, waited maybe a month, and then got my temp license, which, wasn't too difficult, but also, had lots of help. So that was good.
So describe your working situation.
So right now I'm working at an intensive outpatient, Rogers Behavioral Health. They've got a location near where I live. And so I'm working there, and they've got basically, it's kind of like group therapy, a lot of it. So there's a mix of like individual therapy and then also like group-based. So we've got different programs. There's like an adolescent side and then an adult side. And so I'm on the adult side and I'm the trauma therapist, and I have a mix of patients who are working on trauma as well as depression. So kind of with that, there's a mix of individual and group. So it's and they're there from morning to afternoon. So it's about like 6 hours that they're there, and we're kind of working with them, doing groups, also helping them with some individual therapy stuff. So it's a very different than I expected I would be doing, or at least from what I was like the individual type of therapy that I was doing mostly in my internship, like in school and stuff. So have had to adapt to the way that it looks different.
What were you expecting at this point in your career? You'd spent a couple of years in grad school. What did you imagine that your pre-license years would be looking like, and how have the expectations really been different?
Yeah, I think maybe I think I felt prepared in some senses, but also there was some things that I wasn't prepared for, of just like the variety of what being a therapist could look like. I think or at least a lot of people in my program, were very much going private practice route. And so in some ways I kind of expected like, oh, okay, I guess I'll kind of land there too. And I tried that for a little bit, and then I was like, I don't really like this. And so then I switched over because I was like, I feel like I like working in a team better. So that's one thing that I appreciate. But I guess, yeah, my expectations were that I would just kind of be getting into private practice and just kind of doing that. But that really was what I found that I didn't really like. And, it might change. I might want to do that eventually. But at least for right now, I feel like the best thing for me is to have a lot of people around me who probably know more than I do. So I think that has been something that I maybe kind of knew that I wanted, but didn't listen to that at first.
What were you finding in that private practice situation that you realized that you needed the team around you? Can you talk more about really what
Yeah.
that experience was like and what helped you come to that realization?
Yeah, I mean, just like the business side of it, I just did not was not prepared for that at all. And other people probably have a lot more experience like with business things, but I'm just not as experienced with those kind of things. So the business aspect of it, I was like, oh, this is challenging. And I think eventually maybe I could grow to learn those skills. But I was like, really what I want to focus on right now is becoming a good therapist and having resources of, people around me who I can learn from. And I think in private practice, at least what I found was that it's kind of isolating. And especially for me, still being in that learning, like you're always learning, but really being early on in that learning process, I just found that it was a little bit too isolating for me. And I didn't have all the money in the world to spend on trainings to be able to learn things. And, at least where I am, I'm getting some training and I'm getting paid for that training. So that was kind of what led me to switching out of that.
How quickly did you switch out?
Probably like a month or so, because originally I was at 2 different private practices and then left one of them, and then started working where I'm currently working, like PRN. And then after I did my training, I was like, well, actually, I think I'd rather just do this. So then after that, I just left both of those private practices and was like, I'm just going to do this. Makes financial sense, makes logical sense for me. Just felt like the best choice.
As a therapist, your time is precious, and Simple Practice helps you protect it. Their new AI-powered note taker creates structured progress notes in minutes, so you can wrap up sessions and move on with your day. Easy to use billing features take the hassle out of getting paid, even when insurance is involved.
Another great perk? Scheduling is simple for you and your clients with unlimited automated appointment reminders. Make the most of every day with an all-in-one practice management solution that lets you focus on the work that matters most, connecting with your clients. Join over 225,000 practitioners who trust Simple Practice to keep their day running smoothly. Start today at simplepractice.com.
Oftentimes, folks are hesitant to go into agency or treatment center work because of the horror stories.
Yeah.
And you're saying kind of the opposite. And so maybe talk through the benefits beyond training and team that you're seeing that have led you to feel happier in a agency treatment center setting versus private practice.
Yeah, I think because there's also parts of me that see the challenges of those agencies and like community healthcare or community health places. Like I also see that.
And obviously, let's be clear, there's a lot of different ways that you can
Oh,
work
yeah.
for organizations. So treatment centers have different reputations than public mental health or community mental health. So
Oh, yeah.
of course, but for your perspective, this is something that a lot of folks don't even consider because they've heard such bad things about working for organizations. And so what's the good, the bad, the ugly about where you're working?
Yeah, I think definitely like what has really pulled me to it is the stability. I think there's so much instability in private practice, at least like starting out for sure. And that kind of came down to like the financial and like logistical sense of it too, of like, I'm can't really make a livelihood on, trying to build up a caseload right now while also just coming right out of grad school. And so that was one thing. But specifically like for like the good of, like treatment centers and stuff like that, like I think you get a different perspective of like what therapy can look like and what, you know, working with clients can look like. And at least for me, like don't I have a hard time like seeing like what the final destination is for me, like as a therapist. But I think that really what is important for me is like the learning that I'm doing. And so I think that there's a lot of learning that can be done in like a treatment center or in like more kind of intense acute cases as well, where, I'm not having to handle it on my own and there's other people that I can go to. And I'm also learning those skills of like, how do you handle something like this? And how do you learn from these things? So I think really like what was the biggest thing for me is like, where am I going to learn the most? And I felt like that's probably going to be in, a treatment center. So kind of like that.
That makes a lot of sense.
You're talking about money. How are you finding wages to be? What were you finding that private practice? Let's get into the dirty details of what it is to be kind of in your first year out of grad school, what you're facing.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking with one of my friends and she kind of joked. She was like, they should have told us like if you're going to go into private practice, you should like be married or like have another person have some other kind of like steady income going in there. So that was kind of a joke we had. But yeah, I think definitely for private practice, it takes a while to build it up. And, having going straight into that, like some people find a lot of success. Like I have people in my cohort that have been able to find a lot of success. But at least where I am, we've got a lot of therapists and it's kind of hard to, differentiate in some ways. So yeah, I think with that. And then also for me and like my job, I think wages are not super awesome. I think there's always that aspect of, you know, we have our internships and a lot of times internships are unpaid. And then also when we're getting into our careers, we're having to pay for supervision. Like that's another thing too, is that we're getting paid less than, like a licensed clinician, which in some cases is pretty fair. But there's also that aspect of we have to pay for those trainings and those supervisions. And a lot of the times it can be challenging to do all of those things. And there's a lot of training that I would like to do. I have people in my cohort that have done like specific trainings on certain modalities like EMDR and, more kind of specific trainings on stuff. But that can be challenging to do with also having to pay for supervision and things like that. So there's just a lot of upfront costs as well as paying for your licensure and paying for the exam. So there's just a lot that you do have to pay for. So, yeah.
And it's so interesting because in California, you get paid to go to supervision because you have to be an employee. So it's very different in different states. And so it is interesting to hear folks around the country talk about their experiences because you will need, if for folks who are listening who are considering this career, you will need to look at what's available and how things work in your particular area. But I know money's hard to talk about, so I want to ask a little bit of a broad question so we can get actually some nuts and bolts here. You said that some of your cohort has been successful in private practice. What does that mean? What does that functionally look like? Do you have even, dollar ranges per hour, that kind of stuff? It doesn't need to be in depth. You don't need to out anybody. But what is actually possible from where you are to be quote unquote successful in private practice first year out of grad school?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one person in particular who I think they're at a group practice. So there's, a maybe 30-40% that's being taken out of their session fee. But I think they're, at $150 per session and they've got a full caseload, which it looks like 20 to 25 clients a week. And so they their job is also nice because they're getting paid. They get paid for also doing like notes and stuff like that. Like they get like an hourly rate in addition for like documentation, stuff like that, in addition to, the session fee. But of course, when you're at a group practice, there's a portion of your fee for seeing a client that's taken out a little bit. But yeah, it looks like most people, at least the rates that I've seen, are about like $150 to $180 for private practice.
So we could do the math, but I think that's probably not that interesting. But it's, you get a $150 to $180 fee. You're getting probably more like $100 per session yourself. And then there's some nominal fee that you get for your administrative time.
Sure.
And that can be fairly successful. And most likely, my experience is a lot of group practices don't have benefits. So you're paying for your benefits, that kind of stuff, unless you have a partner that, you get to put yourself on their benefits.
Right.
For salary ranges in your area for folks working in treatment centers, what kind of things what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen anywhere from like 45,000 to unlicensed, probably like around 65,000. And then for licensed, it goes up from like 65 to, I've seen all the way up to 80K. Okay. So that's kind of what the numbers look like. And I'm sure that there are some other spaces that do more, do less, but that's kind of the average of what I've seen in my area.
Yeah, thanks. That's very helpful.
Yeah, of course.
If you're a therapist in private practice, email is probably one of your biggest compliance risks. What most therapists don't know is that Gmail and Outlook are not fully compliant on their own. Powbox helps you secure every email you send and receive by ensuring outbound email is automatically encrypted and delivered directly to your client's inbox. No portals or passwords required. You can do all this without changing your tools or how you work. Powbox works seamlessly with your existing Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 account.
Powbox also protects your inbox from phishing and malicious emails that target healthcare practices. Setup is fast, there's no training required, and Powbox's US-based team is ready to help if you need it. As a Modern Therapist Survival Guide listener, you can get $250 off an annual Powbox plan. Just visit powbox.com, that's PAUBOX, and use promo code MODERN to get started.
You're talking about some of the job or career aspects that are kind of a surprise and a learning curve. As you've been out in the field a little bit more here too, reflecting back on grad school? Is there clinical aspects that you feel that you weren't quite prepared for as far as moving out into the workforce?
Yeah. In specific, I think that there were a lot of things that I was able to learn, but I think really kind of reminding us that we also need to maybe have like our own learning plan that we set for ourselves, like post grad as well. Cause early on, I was kind of like, wait, do I remember anything that I learned? And so I think that at least like I've had to kind of reevaluate of myself of like, okay, I need to like continue reading my books and like continue learning and reminding myself to keep doing that as well as like reminding myself that like I do know stuff and like I don't also want to, I want to be humble about like there's a lot of stuff I don't know, but there is, I know stuff. And there's that aspect of like I think it's hard for like young clinicians to trust themselves in some senses. And so,
Sure.
I think that comes with experience and it comes with like good supervision too of, being like, "Oh wait, I did have a good sense of what I was supposed to do." And then these people around me are also saying like, "Yeah, okay, yeah, you knew what to do." So, yeah, I think good supervision is a big part of that as well. But yeah, I think maybe working with like higher acuity cases, I think at least for like marriage and family therapy, um we don't we're because we're more, like, relational and systemic, and so, like, with certain, like, you know, different kind of mental illnesses that you see, there was some, like, "I don't know exactly how to work with this," or maybe I do, and I'm just second guessing myself, but also, making sure that I'm seeking additional supervision for things that I'm like, "I need additional help with this." So, yeah, I think maybe in other, like a more clinical kind of I don't know what, like, a clinical mental health program looks like, but there's a lot of in where I work also, there's a lot more, like, LPCs and, like, clinical mental health counselors, and so I'm kind of one of the sole MFTs in my practice as well, but, it has its strengths as well. I'm able to conceptualize a little bit different. So, it's we all kind of have different backgrounds and different ways of looking at things, which I think in the end is helpful, to have those different perspectives.
So, a lot has happened since we last spoke with you. It's been a full year. Lots of things in the news, lots of things in, kind of technological advances. There's been so many things that have shifted out in the world. And even before we hit record, you talked about that a lot has changed for you as well.
Sure.
I'm curious how your personal life or current events have impacted your training or your work as a clinician.
Yeah, it's a lofty question because
So
there's
break it down as much as in whatever way you'd like.
yeah, because there's so many different ways that things have changed, and, I think there's been a lot of public opinion and, like, just something that's coming into my mind is, the cuts to mental health care, and I think that that has been scary for a lot of people, and a lot of people have been afraid of losing jobs and, all the stuff with AI. That was something that, it was funny to think, but, like, when I first started my grad program, like, it was kind of a thing, but it wasn't as big of a thing. And so, like, now there's just so much with all of that, and, there are ways that that can be really helpful, and there are ways that I've seen it not be helpful, like, for clinicians as well as, like, for clients. And so, like, at least, one way that I've seen is that at least the place where I'm at right now is changing the way they do screenings, and so they've got, like, an AI screening and haven't been getting good feedback on that from people who have, been taking it, but, those are things that they're learning. But, yeah, I think that there's, a lot of tangible ways that people are struggling, and, as as clinicians, there's the aspect of like ourselves as people too. And I think a lot of clinicians are also like, whether it's like moral injuries and like having to not being able to help in ways that maybe we would like to in those tangible ways, but kind of doing what we can with what we have. Yeah, I think there's parts of me that is like, oh, I wish I could do some more kind of like social work as well, of being able to help with like tangible things, of like people's, basic needs as well. But I think mental health is such a huge part of that too. And, it all is, as a systemic thinker, I'm like, it's all connected. It's hard for a lot of people out there. And I think that at least another thing that I've seen like with current events too, and I think that this impacts like, you know, and another part of like private practice too is I was like, I don't have the money to pay for that. And there was a part of me that was, I don't know, I just kind of had like some feelings about it of like asking for that much, knowing how challenging it is, which I think is something you have to, cuz figure out of how to make that work. Not a lot of people can afford how much therapy is. So there's a lot of ways that people are trying to make it more accessible and kind of using insurance, but then also insurance is getting more expensive as well. So it's just it's it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a scary time for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
Have you found some of the uncertainty around budget cuts, around technology affecting the workforce, affecting you and the decisions that you're making in your career path?
Yeah, I think I had said earlier, like finances was a big reason that I also decided to do the job that I'm doing. And there is a level of job security you get when you're in an agency or in a treatment center. It's not foolproof, but it's a little bit more secure than when you're out on your own and kind of have a business of your own. And I've had a friend who was working at a group practice and then the group practice suddenly closed and she got like a month or two but from when they closed it. And so that, you know, that's scary.
Sure.
And yeah, there's definitely challenges in being more independent. I mean, there's a lot of good in being more independent, but sometimes you get a layer of safety when you're embedded in, you know, a larger system essentially of like a treatment center or agency.
The world is kind of hard to navigate right now, or especially the country is hard to navigate right now with what you're talking about. And you're at the very beginning of your career.
Mhm.
And so there's the uncertainty that you're describing around finances and how to stabilize those elements of your career. It seems like a need that you're describing to get clinical support and really learn your job, which I know Curt and I've talked about this in other episodes. So we'll link those in the show notes at mtsgpodcast.com. And it seems like to a certain extent, you're getting some support from the folks at the treatment center. It sounds like you're keeping in touch with folks in your cohort. And I'm just curious, what types of support do you have and what types of support are you looking for as a temporarily licensed clinician?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are resources that I have are definitely like past professors. Like I had good relationships, so that has been helpful to be able to, I have multiple people that, have been in my cohort have been able to reach back out and I've been able to reach back out and that is a great line of communication and very helpful because they're very experienced. As well as like with the supervisor, that is helpful too to have that. And I've got, an individual supervisor that I'm able to, get hours for, and then one that I have at work, but I'm not, it's not going towards my licensure hours because they have a different license. it's hard because it's like there could always be more support. And I think that something that could be helpful and something that I've thought about is like having a mentor kind of, or like friends that are more advanced in their careers. Because I've got my friends who are at the same level as I am. And I'm my supervisor, but I'm paying for that. And so being able to just like have those organic relationships with people so that I'm not having to, pay my friend. But,
Yeah.
we're able to learn from each other. And it's that I think that would be something cool, just to be able to find other more experienced clinicians in different areas and just have, relationship. To be able to just learn from that, I think would be another thing that could be helpful.
What are your goals for the next year? What is your plan to continue to move forward and expand upon Eden's career, Eden's life?
Yeah, I think I would love to do some more training, and I'll have to see if I can, budget for those things and really kind of zoning in on, the type of therapist I want to be with those trainings. And I hope that I'm going to take my exam. I'm planning for that. I'm probably going to ask for like some study books or something for Christmas, I think is going to be what's on my Christmas list. And then also just like continuing with reading and kind of getting an education plan for myself so that I'm able to kind of continue learning and create that plan for myself. But yeah, I mean, hopefully just continue to get my hours and, make a living and continue learning and growing and working towards licensure, hopefully.
At this point in your career, do you have any parting advice on this episode for anybody who might be interested in pursuing becoming a therapist?
I guess something that I had to learn was I knew what I kind of wanted to do when I was graduating. I kind of always had the idea of like, I don't want to go right into private practice. And, some people know that they do want to go into private practice. So I think getting in touch with what it is that you want from your career, if you are wanting to be a therapist, kind of knowing like, what do you want that to look like? And also knowing that you might have to be flexible with that. Kind of given the state of the world and the state of the job field, being flexible with like, if you're working towards that, if you're working towards a certain goal, like great. And then also being flexible with how you get there. Cause, there's not one approach to do it. I think that would be some advice that would have been helpful for me as well.
So trust yourself, be flexible. And I'll add another piece to it because I started my career in agencies, treatment centers, that kind of stuff. Recognize that there's different eras and you don't have to know exactly where you're heading before you start it. You can learn a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for spending your time with us and sharing your experience with our audience. And this is a wonderful project that we're doing. We're really glad to be sharing kind of this pre-license experience with everybody. So love for people to follow us on our social media, join our Facebook group, Modern Therapist Group, to continue on with this and other conversations. And until next time, I'm Curt with Katie Verneuil and Eden Lathem.
Over 225,000 practitioners already use Simple Practice to grow their business and simplify admin tasks that take time away from their clients. Isn't it time your EHR worked as hard as you do? Find out more at simplepractice.com.
Thanks again to our sponsor, Powbox, helping therapists secure every email they send and receive. Get $250 off an annual plan with promo code MODERN. Visit powbox.com, that's PAUBOX.com, to protect your practice and your clients.
Thank you for listening to the Modern Therapist Survival Guide. Learn more about who we are and what we do at mtsgpodcast.com. You can also join us on Facebook and Twitter. And please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes.